Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here, back again with a daily dose of doom and gloom. You know, some days, guys, it's like I'm living in the twilight zone. Day after day, I'm like a sponge for all this open source intelligence information, and every so often it concresses into an epiphany of sorts. And I regret to inform you that it's far, far worse than I could ever make out on this channel. We are seeing unparalleled levels of military activity on every single continent, in every single military theater, happening simultaneously. We're talking about live fire exercises, okay? Simulating offensive maneuvers into countries to take them over, happening all around the earth. We're talking about nuclear exercises, joint military exercises on scopes and scales that we've never before seen since World War II. And I regret to inform you that there is a major war coming because we have two realities in this world. One of those realities we recently caught a glimpse into with the leaks. There's the spy versus spy secretive reality that only the people who are in privileged positions know about, and I'm not talking about any of that red herring, misinformation, brain falls out of your head, tinfoil hat nonsense. I'm talking about the world of Central Intelligence Agencies. Okay, they know things that will make our world seem like a cartoon. We recently were told about leaks. Okay, and that's a great metaphor because it's a very small leak from a massive reservoir of bullshit that we are simply not privileged enough to know about. And the people who know about it are, you know, the Central Intelligence Agencies, the NSA, the FBI, every other three-letter acronym, the DoD that you can think of, you know, the high-profile corporate CEOs, the high-profile military personnel, the politicians. Some of them might have a little bit of insight into the real inner workings of the world. That's the real reality. The other reality is the blue-haired people arguing with the people with red hats. And that's what they want. They want the mutinous masses quelled with this mind-numbing trash media so that we don't panic. But I'm telling you right now, I'm not saying panic, but man, you better be preparing. And I know, day after day, we're talking about how bad things are getting. And indeed, on the flip side of that, life is pretty good in a lot of ways. And we need to embrace and enjoy that, but understand that there's a big, big war happening right now. We are seeing record levels of military expenditure all over the world, and that's not for no reason. Just to give you a little bit of an insight into what's going on, let's take a look at the map. Feels like I'm in an episode of Dora the Explorer. Always talking about the map. All right, there's been a major hack on NATO by Russia's KillNet explorers. You don't hear this on the news. 60% of their systems were down due to denial of service attack. All sorts of information on all their members. Understand that this is what you're going to see. This is the order of operations. Cyber attack, space warfare in some capacity, be it electronic or kinetic. You're going to see electromagnetic pulse, and then it's going to be nuclear Armageddon. We are seeing a higher level of leaks, whether you believe them to be entirely true or not. There's likely, you know, where there's smoke, there's definitely fire. Some people are saying that all the leaks are true, or none of it's true, or part of it's true. Some, you know, falsehoods have been mixed in to dilute the truth, and maybe the media is not focusing on the leaks that they should. Understand that there is a cyber war being waged right now. It hasn't ramped up yet, because when it ramps up, we're going to find out. Apparently, one of these leaks had let the information go that apparently the Russians are already in a lot of Canada's critical infrastructural systems, and with the flick of a switch, they can make our natural gas pipelines explode. I mean, we've talked about this before, how a lot of our critical infrastructure is hardwired in a cyber way. And, you know, if that happens in the dead of winter, we're in big, big trouble. Fortunately, we're coming into summer now. Some people theorized that if World War III was going to start, that they would do it in winter, because that would be a disadvantageous position for most Western nations to be in. Anyways, understand that there's A major hack that has just happened in the last 24 hours and you're not hearing about it anywhere. North Korea has been silent for 5 days. The de-escalation hotline that exists between South Korea and the United States and North Korea has been quiet for 5 days. And understand this, not many people talk about this enough, that there's only an Eastern theater. There's no Korean Peninsula theater and Taiwan, Chaiwan, I like to call it Chaiwan, theater. These are interconnected, meaning that you cannot look at one, what's happening in one, with zero respect for the other. So the reason why North Korea has been silent for 5 days is it obviously has something to do with the fact that China was staging these live fire exercises. I mean, China has went from, basically being, officially not too overly interested in having any sort of conflict with Taiwan, I'm talking just 1 year ago, to simulating an all-out strike. And usually they're pretty veiled in their threats. This time it was very open, it was very overt, and it was very aggressive. They showed an animation of them basically leveling the island with missiles. It doesn't get more explicit than that, and they still have their aircraft carrier out to sea, blocking any access into the Taiwan Strait. So we could be a few days away from an engagement with either the Americans or the Taiwanese and the Chinese. Anyways, when you see something happen in North Korea, it's intimately linked with what's going on in Taiwan. Yeah, F-22 Raptors sent to Russia's border. I mean, this is absolutely huge. F-22 Raptors, they're sending them to Poland. And when we say Russia's border, we're talking about Kaliningrad, because somebody's going to be like, Russia don't border Poland? Yes, they do. This is called Kaliningrad. And there's a whole lot of nuclear weapons here. They're sending F-22 Raptors. They're getting rid of the F-15s, or they're sending back the F-15s, or maybe they're going to send the F-15s to Ukraine. Maybe that's going to be the plan. Understand they're sending F-22 Raptors. The United States, as far as we know, their most advanced weapons system. That's a major escalation right on the border of Kaliningrad. They already got HIMARS systems on the border, okay? They already got barricades up with Belarus. Belarus is getting nukes. How can you not see the massive, unending escalation that is happening right now? I mean, this is a collision course. It's not slowing down. I mean, yeah, there's talks about ceasefires and stalemates, but it ain't slowing down, man. And it's getting to the point where even I'm starting to get nervous about it. And I'm not saying I'm like some stoic person that never gets nervous. It's just that day in and day out I'm exposed to this stuff. But every so often you have this epiphany like, holy shit, all the pieces are really falling into place for this to be a massive nuclear conflagration. That's what's going down. We got F-22 Raptors close to the Russian border. It is not looking good. We had another brush-in the Black Sea with a spy plane today. I mean, there's been so much stuff happening today. It's unbelievable. Russia tested an ICBM into Kazakhstan. I don't know why they would do it into Kazakhstan when they could do it anywhere else. Was this some show of solidarity between Russia and Kazakhstan? It may well have been. This, of course, on the same day that the United States is running their annual Global Thunder exercise, which is a nuclear preparedness exercise. On the same day, we're still on the same day, Russia doing an Arctic nuclear exercise with their Belgorod submarines and their Poseidon nuclear torpedoes. You know those things you never heard about 1 year ago that now you're hearing about all of the Axis countries possessing, like the North Koreans and the Russians, these radioactive tsunami-inducing super weapons? Yeah, it's just, another run-of-the-mill Arctic nuclear exercise with doomsday torpedoes. Nothing to look at there. A lot of open source intelligence gatherers are suggesting that there may well be an incident at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in Ukraine soon, because it is right in the crossfire of what may well be the major counteroffensive that's coming. But we don't know if that's coming or not. I'm going to show you an interactive map of all the Russian fortifications, and the Russians certainly think that's the direction it's coming from. based on where they are putting the majority of their fortifications, but the extensiveness of their fortified line is massive. Most people do not realize there's a reason why only the Wagner Group has been busy in Bakhmut, and it's because the Russian military has been busy building trenches throughout the entirety of that massive front line that is hundreds and hundreds of miles long. Now, the leaks, as I said, I don't know what to make of it. At this point, my knee-jerk reaction to it was, okay, there's probably some truth to this, but there's probably a lot of BS because the media is focusing on certain things. So is the media focusing on the links that we're supposed to focus on to take attention away from the other links? Has there been some artificial stuff injected there to dilute the truth and the power of the other leaks? Is this, as somebody has speculated, to prevent nuclear war? Somebody has a theory that this is to prevent the United States and Russia going to nuclear war. That had these leaks remained quiet, maybe the United States and Ukraine could not have pursued their plans to do this grand counteroffensive. But, you know, that the Russians are going to take it as, oh, this is just, you're just putting this out to fool us or to try to misdirect us. Well, maybe, or maybe it is the real plan. Now, nobody knows what the hell is going on. Okay, you've created that strategic ambiguity of sorts in the information war. The timing of the leak is very suspect. Of course, it happens right before everybody's talking about the grand, Ukrainian counteroffensive. Well, I remember over winter, everybody was talking about the big Russian winter offensive that was going to come. Of course, that one didn't come because Europe was missed by winter. Just record-breaking temperatures across the board prevented the ground from hardening up to the extent that it needed to for Russia to go on the offensive. So anyways, in other news, we got the U.S. engaged in the largest ever drill in the Philippines. I mean, everything is just largest ever this, largest ever that, largest ever drill in the Philippines. They're going to be opening 4 more military bases there, adding on to the 5 they already have, and dozens of military bases they have in and around the South China Sea because they know the war is coming. Ukraine is saying, hey, you know what? This whole Budapest memorandum thing, we're going to revisit that, and I think that we should get nukes again. If Ukraine gets nukes, it's game over. It's lights out for all of us. Apparently, that was one of the pieces of information that was in the leak. Something to do with that, or was that? No, correction. That was Arestovich who said that, a high-ranking Ukrainian official who said that we could theoretically make nukes. We have everything that we need in order to make nuclear weapons, and we could do it in 6 months. The Budapest Memorandum was something signed at the end of the Cold War that got Kazakhstan, Ukraine, and Belarus, I believe, to forfeit their nuclear weapons in exchange for security guarantees. And of course, all those countries did that. Belarus now has kind of gone back on their promise. They're going to be housing other people's nuclear weapons. So that's how the Russians are saying it's still in line with the non-proliferation treaty. However, it's possible. It's possible that Ukraine could get a nuke. It's possible they already have nukes, and that's why the Russians are being so measured in their approach there. It's very hard to say at this point. We're going to talk about skyrocketing food prices. What time are we at here? We're already at 14 minutes, and we haven't done the summary yet. Holy smokes. 20% year over year global food price increase. I talked briefly, I think, about the leak that suggested that the Russians have hacked Canadian critical infrastructure, that they have malware already installed and ready to go on some aspects of our critical infrastructure that, should war break out, they're going to flick that switch and it's going to be lights out across Canada potentially. We're going to talk about failures of Russian air defense, and I have a theory with respect to why Ukrainian drones are being able to penetrate Russian airspace so readily. We also need to talk about the price of gold in real terms going up. Your mind will be blown when I tell you how much money has been added to the gold market just in the last 3 months. And I'm not talking about inflation, okay? I'm not talking about the US dollar dropping, therefore the price of gold increases. I'm talking about actual money that has been put in to the gold market in just the past 3 months. It is absolutely staggering. And because gold is such a huge market, it's probably one of the biggest markets in the world. If it was a corporation, I mean, it would be, what is Apple, like $2 trillion? The global gold market is 13.5 trillion. Okay, so it takes a lot to move that needle. Anyways, de-dollarization continues. What else is new? Oh, and ChatGPT has wrote a peace proposal. So maybe we'll end on that note. Maybe artificial intelligence will set things right. You never know. It could work both ways. Could be Skynet, or it might be the only thing that saves us. Russian hacker group Killnet leaks confidential data of NATO members. And apparently they're trolling a lot of the NATO members. They're signing them up for all of these nasty websites, and they're trying to ruin their reputations. But the thing you need to know is that over 60% of NATO's electronic infrastructure has been rendered inoperable. Pardon the microphone here, guys, just making sure everything's straight. As a result of a large-scale distributed denial of service attack, and the organization is continuing to sustain damage as a result. The leader of Killnet has confessed that the goal of the organization is to do as much damage to NATO's computer networks, infrastructure, and other systems as possible. As a direct consequence of this, several agencies and departments inside NATO, the successful operation of which is absolutely necessary for the operation of the whole alliance, have become the targets of these hacking attacks. So this is major. This is what you would see before a kinetic exchange. You would see a widespread attack. They would be saving their best cyber weapons for a moment like this. I cannot see them doing this unless there was something coming. Because unless you were trying to slow them down, like I say, is this just spy versus spy stuff? Because we know that, once again, it cannot be understated that what we see in our world is but the tip of the iceberg. The intelligence agencies of the world have an entirely different reality, and I'm going to beat that horse to death every single day from this point forward. Those leaks were just a drop in the bucket of a massive reservoir of lies. Mark my words. Now, if you want to know what's going on in the world, just look at where the aircraft carriers are. I mean, we have to make inferences like this. You know, don't trust what they're saying, because what they're saying never lines up with reality. Trust what they're doing. Is there record-setting scope and scale of military exercises happening all around the world simultaneously? Yes. Is there record military expenditure from pretty much any country who has money right now? Yes. Is there 4 aircraft carriers in the east and only 1 close to Ukraine? Yes. What does that tell you about American priorities? China is the priority. Russia is a means to sink the China ship. If they can balkanize Russia, if they can sow chaos in Russia, which it's looking like it's going to be virtually impossible for them to do that. I mean, I don't even know how they could possibly think they would do that or be able to achieve that, but they're going to try. Then they can get to China. This is where the real war is about to take off. I mean, this is why day after day you are constantly hearing about stuff on the Korean Peninsula, why the North Koreans haven't picked up the phone for 5 days while the Chinese were doing military exercises. Why would you do something so provocative? Something is going down. Something really, really big is building. They're saying 2027. Some of the military generals in the US are saying 2025. It could happen any day now, because China has already simulated the attack of Taiwan. They haven't simulated, as far as we know, the landed invasion. Of course, I'm sure they have plans for that. But because of this leak now, everybody's going to doubt whether any offensive plans that they have, whether the United States knows, are they anticipating it? Because it really is a full-blown info war at this point in time. I mean, if you have the ability to keep secrets right now, you can win wars. You can win wars against countries who are 10 times bigger than you if you can keep secrets, if you can prevent them from knowing what your next move is going to be. So these leaks, as somebody has theorized, may well have pushed nuclear war down the road just a little bit. because maybe they wanted to make them know, maybe they wanted to make it known that they know all this stuff in order to sow doubt in some of these leaders. Anyways, things are getting real out there in the Southeast China Sea. This is America's military footprint. So they have bases all over the Philippines. These red ones are about to be new military bases. And of course, they're all in the direction of Taiwan, which is not a surprise. And I don't have my map of all of the other U.S. military bases in the region, but they're all over the place. There's dozens, and they all surround Taiwan. Right now, in and around Taiwan, the Chinese have one of their aircraft carriers here. This one right here, Chinese aircraft carrier Shandong, and that is, oh, here's the map here. That is the eastern side of Taiwan. So it's opposite, of course, the mainland. So that's there strategically, I'm presuming, to prevent or at least deter any U.S. involvement in trying to get involved in this conflict. And recall, there's been several neocon warhawk types who've said that, hey, we support putting boots on the ground in Taiwan. Let's see how well that goes. You remember Vietnam? We had Bob Moriarty talking about that the other day. And, you know, I haven't really talked to him about what his thoughts would be on, you know, from a military analysis standpoint of how a war like this would play out in terms of air power. Right now, the Chinese are building fifth-generation warplanes that some people say, well, they're not tested. They're these J-20 or whatever they are. But they're building them at such a rapid rate, it's not going to matter. They're just going to have so many to throw at the problem. That, and what I'll say about the F-22 is, while it's been in service for a long time, you can make the argument that the actual peer-to-peer tests of F-22's has been rather limited. Like, it hasn't partook in this war yet. So sure, an F-22 might do fine against a bunch of, you know, helpless goat herders and, you know, terrorist organizations or whatever who don't have missile defense systems and their own fighter jets. But is it really, you know, going to make that much of a difference when you're up against Russian missile defense, Chinese missile defense, and even third-gen fighters? I mean, is one F-22 Raptor going to be able to take on 10 crappy fighter jets? Maybe. I don't know enough about it. But what I'm saying is that the Americans are saying that, yeah, our stuff's been tested. But has it really been tested in a peer-to-peer, high-intensity conflict with an equivalent, with an adversary who has the same technological sophistication as you? I don't think so. But I guess time will tell. Of course, they've been reluctant to put these weapons into combat because nobody wants their best stuff being stolen. And you know that the situation's getting desperate when they start sending their best stuff in. That's why when I see the Russians sending in their old stock tanks, you know that, you know, they're probably still sitting pretty. It's when they start having to send all their new stuff in, that's when you know that they might be getting desperate because they're not worried about losing it. They have to use it. Now, as I was saying, for the first time, the Chinese Navy appears to have simulated strikes by aircraft carrier-based warplanes on Taiwan as drills around the island wrapped up on their third day, CNN reports. This frickin' microphone, man. I got to get like a boom mic or something in here. Now, again, this is the most aggressive posture that we've seen from China ever. You already have U.S. Navy P-8 Poseidon maritime patrol and anti-submarine aircraft within the region conducting operations in and around Taiwan. So the stage is set for the Americans to interact with the Chinese in a way which is not good for anybody. Again, China is going to be checking Taiwan's vessels. Taiwan says they're not going to comply with these checks. The Chinese patrol ships are going to be checking Taiwan commercial vessels, likely looking for weapons coming in from the United States. Understand that time is of the essence for the Chinese. The longer they allow Taiwan to build up their military forces, China has to, at least in theory, triple the amount of output that they have. There's that whole 3-to-1 defender to offender ratio. When you try to attack a place or you try to imperialize a place, expect to lose about 3 times the amount of guys that the defenders will. So every missile that Taiwan gets, China has to build 3. So time is of the essence, which is why we may see this war unfold much quicker than a lot of people realize. What's going on in other worlds? Yeah, we got all those aircraft carriers in and around South Korea. Again, this is very, very suspicious that North Korea has ignored the South's phone calls 5 days in a row. These are very important de-escalation channels, okay? And if the North Koreans are not communicating, that means the Americans don't know what they're up to, and North Korea is an incredibly secretive place. It may well be one of the few places where the US intelligence doesn't have their tentacles running in as deep as they might in China or Russia, for that matter. So they don't know what they're up to, and that means accidents can happen. We know that the United States already has nuclear weapons in the region. They already said that they will utilize nuclear weapons. They've altered their nuclear doctrine last year to officially, legally allow for the first use of nuclear weapons. And of course, we know, based on the position of all their warships, where they're focused on. They're focused on China and North Korea, because at least with China, they may come to the false conclusion that it might not lead to mutually assured destruction, even though a lot of the experts, the off-the-cuff experts, are saying that China has a lot more nuclear weapons than is officially stated. We're talking about 4 to 5 times the amount, 1,600 operable, ready to go weapons that are already on target, okay, that already have targets set. So let's hope that the intelligence, the boys in intelligence, know what they're doing. North Korea's nuclear arsenal has grown 75% since 2017. They already have 100. Isn't that crazy? I mean, all this stuff is happening, and we're the paranoid ones for acknowledging that trillions of dollars in a sinking global economy where resources are becoming more scarce is being devoted to the task of building more weapons of mass destruction, and we're the crazy ones. When you got guys like this, yep, we're ready for war with China, even though we have like $30 trillion of debt, not counting the derivative bubble and whatever other debt is hidden within the system. These people are delusional. I mean, I'm just, every so often, I'll just amuse myself to take attention away from this stuff. I'll just watch NPC videos. A few years ago, there was a few NPC videos, but it wasn't a popular genre. Now, every day, the New York subway is churning out NPCs like crazy. I mean, the Canada alike and the United States, we're going downhill fast. And then I go and I watch these videos where they give you tours, like these are Americans in China, showing the amazing level of sophistication of their technological infrastructure there, which is just mind-blowing, worlds apart from what we have here, which is a complete and utter dilapidated shithole, to be brutally honest, in most places. In Canada as well. Yeah, we got some nice, new suburban developments that are mostly just these, prefab matchbox buildings with the facade and the whole 9 yards. A stiff breeze could blow them over. But by and large, guys, it's all a facade. We're not nearly as wealthy as we think. In fact, we have more debt. All the richest countries in the world have the most amount of debt. And debt ultimately has to be paid unless there's a big jubilee, and that requires a crash. We're going to have Bob Moriarty back for part 2 of our interview in just a few minutes. What do we got going on here? Russia testing intercontinental ballistic missiles. Hits target in Kazakhstan. And now, as we talked about the other day, they can do these nuclear tests without notifying the United States, meaning that every time they launch an ICBM, the United States has to presume that there's a possibility that it's real world. And with that comes the potential for an accident. Now, thankfully, there's a lot of fail-safes in place to make sure those accidents don't happen, but still not good. April 11, 2023, the combat crew of the Strategic Missile Troops successfully launched the ICBM of the land-based mobile missile system from Kapistan Yar State Central Multi-Service Training Ground in Astrakhan region. I actually read that properly. Well, hooked on phonics worked for me. We got Macron in China. I'm still trying to make heads and tails of this situation. If any guys have theories, let me know. Some people think that there is a divide happening in NATO, that the French may defect from the NATO alliance and go their own way, and that there's going to be three power blocks. There's going to be the European, the American, and the Sino-Russo alliance in the East. It's hard to say at this point in time. It's really hard to say if there's a war brewing within NATO, but we know that France just conducted the largest ever NATO military exercise in their country. So I think this is being overplayed a little bit. And in fact, I think Xi is not a dummy. I think he knows that they may have sent Macron there to, who knows, maybe he just bugged the place. Maybe he's an agent. And I say that facetiously, jokingly, but somewhat seriously, that he could just be there to try to slow the process down. You know, because, I mean, Xi Jinping is never going to trust what anybody in the West has to say after the revelations of, what's-her-face, the German Chancellor, Angela Merkel, came out that they were just trying to buy time with the Minsk agreement in Ukraine so that they could build up their military there. Do you think that Xi really trusts this guy? You know? Do you really think so? I don't think so. I think they see through this. I mean, I would see through it. I wouldn't trust people who have openly come out and said, oh yeah, we just made that agreement with Russia just to buy time so that we could build up our military. Don't you think he's going to think that they're just trying to buy time so that they don't do Taiwan too quickly to give Taiwan some more time? Come on. I think this is all BS. I think France is as in with NATO as they've probably ever been. Russia is adopting new military draft rules. Conscripts and reservists who are being called to arms will get draft notices online. So no more guy coming knock on the door giving you a piece of paper. No, you're getting an email now. And if you don't follow the instruction of that email, draft dodgers would face certain restrictions if the bill comes into force. Those served a draft notice would be banned from leaving Russia starting on the day when the notice is considered to be delivered. They're setting it all up to roll out the next covert conscription. Okay? That's what they're doing. Because, you know, guys walking around with papers and military suits, it's too obvious, right? When you need to... Remember, guys, there was millions. Back when the population was a fraction of what it is today, there was like 10 million guys in the Russian army. Right now, at least as far as we know, there's around 1.5 to 2 million. So the conscription hasn't even started yet. The mass mobilization hasn't even started yet. As for Russian air defense, part of the reason why Russian air defense fails is because you have commercial planes flying in a lot of these regions. Okay, so there is a no-fly zone in a lot of the country. But, you know, the Russians don't want to have another one of these situations like Iran had back in 2020, early 2020, where they shoot down a civilian aircraft by accident. So they need to be very measured in their use of anti-aircraft fire because they need to be 110% sure that it's not a civilian, because it would be obviously, especially if it's like a Chinese plane, you know, I mean, they have to be very careful. So unless it's in airspace, which they absolutely know no civilian aircraft should be in, then it's very hard for them to target with certainty, okay? So that's what I think. Anyways, I show this picture here. We've talked about this. This happened last week. An aircraft factory was on fire. There's been lots of sabotage acts. The Russian Defense Ministry building was on fire in the heart of Moscow the other day. Some people tell me it was just some guy drinking vodka who dropped a cigarette, but I don't know. I don't think so. This is a Russian interactive map Russian fortifications, okay? So this is a Google map. And you can go and click on any of these little dots, and it shows you all the fortified lines, all the trenches, the pillboxes, the bunkers, the tunnels, the whole 9 yards. Everything that's known about anyways. So you can see where a lot of the forces are concentrated in the south, right around the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant region. Because if the Ukrainians do their counteroffensive, they're going to, at least this is as far as I know, they're going to, where am I here? They have to come around here, right? Because this is where they've built up forces on this side of the river. They can't go on this side of the river. So they're probably not going to do an offensive right here. They're going to come around here. And they're going to come down to Melitopol and then try to go into Crimea. But I mean, look at the level of fortifications here. I mean, they got layers and layers, multi-layers of protection so that that can happen. This should not be confused with Russia's offensive forces. They have offensive forces all throughout here. This is just fortifications. This is just like trenches and things of that nature. So they do have all kinds of military equipment here. This is the nuclear power plant. Okay, and the Ukrainians are frequently trying to get into that place. And if we zoom in on that nuclear power plant facility, you can see that I think just recently in the last 48 hours, about 6 or 7 boats were blown out of the water. They tried to invade here because, of course, you know, all the stuff that's going on. This is, you know, the Russians are trying not to draw too much fire to this place. So they say, both sides are saying that the other is going to cause a nuclear emergency. Anyways, this interactive map shows the direction from which the offensive came and which it was repelled. But there is great concern that when this grand offensive starts, that's when we're going to have a radiological incident on our hand. And you remember all that Thyrosafe and potassium iodide medication, hazmat suits, gas masks, all that stuff that the Ukrainian government was stocking up on last year, as well as surrounding countries. That's what it's for. It's for the big counteroffensive, okay? Do a mic check here. Okay, so in terms of the leaked documents, obviously a lot of people are presuming that the implication of NATO in the conflict is far more directive than many of us originally had suspected, even though we all knew that Ukraine was using, you know, NATO weapons, NATO mercenaries, NATO intelligence to conduct their operations. But according to some of these leaks, and are they true, are they untrue, I don't know. But according to some of the leaks, it's very extensive. And in fact, the US is basically training, funding, and directing on-the-ground micro operations, providing all the intelligence, the targets, the whole 9 yards. So they're basically fighting a war against the Russians. That's what these leaks really show. In addition, yeah, there's US personnel who are on the ground deployed in Ukraine. The Russians already knew that because these are the inspectors that are supposed to be auditing the weapons. Now, do I think the Russians are dumb enough to think that that's all they're there for? No. Again, I mean, this is open source intelligence. This is not scratching the surface of what is really known and what is really going on. All we can do is trust what we see with our eyes. Are the Russians moving mobile nuclear platforms through residential areas on a daily? Yes. Do they not have to tell the United States where they're putting those nuclear weapons anymore? Yes. So that's all we need to know. Shit's hitting the fan. And the fecal matter is about to intercept with the oscillating device, as I've heard it so eloquently articulated before. Anyways, we don't even need to go here. I don't even want to show this because apparently John Kirby says, I can't show that. That's an un-American thing to do. The Russian Ministry of Defense has announced that they've begun a large-scale military exercise in the Arctic Ocean and across the Arctic Circle. These exercises are reported to include strategic nuclear drills that will most likely involve the Russian K-329 Belgorod. You know that giant submarine with the 6 Poseidon torpedoes on it that have 100 megaton warheads? Yeah, that one. This F-22 Raptor thing is very concerning to me. Why would they need to send Raptors to Poland right now? You know, does that mean that they're really worried about the war spilling over in the immediate? I mean, why didn't they do this a long time ago? Is this just in response to the Belarusians getting tactical nukes? Are these Raptors somehow going to be deployed to take out Belarus's tactical nuclear weapons? Or are they going to be instrumental in some sort of offensive launched against Kaliningrad? But yeah, I don't know. What do you military guys make of F-22's being deployed in that region? Now, yeah, you could probably make the argument that, okay, Poland already has, what, MiG-35s, or they probably already have some pretty decent air power. But again, why now? You know, that's the question. It's just an escalation. As I said in a recent video, NATO is going to hold its largest ever, there's that word again, largest ever air exercises in June. What else is new? Global food prices soaring 20% in the last year, according to the World Trade Organization. In theory, higher food costs should encourage more agricultural production, they say, resulting in greater availability and lower prices. Well, how are you going to do that if you can't get the parts for anything because you're going to start a new war with the Chinese? The only one who isn't decoupling right now is Tesla. They're building more factories in China, which is actually a good sign. I mean, you want trade. Trade is a hedge against countries going to war. The more trade, the better. However, historically speaking, wars came after countries have had record levels of trade with each other. So it's not necessarily the only factor. But anyways, I did a little number crunching. Back in the beginning of January, the gold market cap was $13.2 trillion. Or sorry, today it's $13.2 trillion. Back in January, it was 12.5. That means 700 billion has been added to the gold market since January. And no, that's not because the dollar is weaker. In fact, the dollar was around 102 back on January 11th in terms of the USD dollar index, and it's around the same right now. Most people would assume that the price of gold goes up because the value of the dollar that it's measured in goes down. That's not the case. The price of the dollar has remained constant. What this means is that the demand for gold is through the roof. We're talking about a $700 billion capital infusion into the gold market. $700 billion. That's a lot of dollars. That means that China, Russia, a lot of the big players are trading in their dollars for gold. And that is problematic for anybody holding dollars. Donald Trump, World War III, he got a standing ovation at the fight with Adesanya and Pereira. What a fight that was. That was insane. U.S. Strategic Command commences annual nuclear command and control exercise today. Involves personnel throughout the strategic enterprise, including U.S. STRATCOM components and subordinate units, blah, 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 blah. They're getting prepared for nuclear Armageddon. What else do you need to know? This is interesting, and this is something every Canadian needs to know, that we are in this war. Okay, we are at war right now. Canada. I know it sounds strange. I know it sounds strange when I'm not even gonna, I was gonna go somewhere, but I would potentially ruin an entire video. If you've been paying attention to Canadian politics lately and some of the people who've been giving speeches in Parliament, then you probably know what I'm laughing about. But Pentagon leaks suggest Russian hackers attack Canadian pipeline, and this is what they're capable of doing. If this happens in winter, we're screwed. In their communications with the FSB, the hackers allegedly shared screenshots in February that showed they had the capability to increase valve pressure, disable alarms, and make emergency shutdowns of unspecified gas distribution station in Canada. A successful operation would cause an explosion at the gas distribution station, and because we rely on natural gas to keep our homes warm, that would be a big problem, I'm guessing. So we pulled out of winter. And some people suspect that if World War III is going to start, it's going to start before winter, because that's when you'd be able to take out the most amount of people. So maybe we have some breathing room. Or maybe they'll just get it started in spring and summer and we'll all have a running chance at surviving, at least more so than we would. Biden gives influencers White House briefing room. And I like what they say at the bottom. This is hilarious, man. This is a clown world thing, if I ever seen one. The president's digital strategy team involves 4 White House staffers dedicated exclusively to recruiting influencers and social media content creators with a specific focus on young and suburban voters and those who've largely tuned out of politics, because you don't want to try to influence people who know a thing or two about anything, for that matter. So yeah, they're going to try to brainwash people with TikTok. And I'm not saying that the other side is really any better. Guys, politics, 2 wings of the same bird. You know where I stand on it. It's all nonsense, which is why I don't talk about it. It's blue-haired arguing with red hat. That's all it is. But, yeah, what was I saying? Anyways. Oh, yeah, TikTok. So they're banking that they're going to be able to leverage TikTok to get Biden elected when, you know, TikTok controls the algorithm. All TikTok is going to try to ensure, and TikTok's going to hang in there as long as they can, they're going to try to ensure that people are as much at each other's throats as possible. They want to see fist fights between the blue hairs and the red hats. If they can achieve that, then it's a great distraction away from what's going on in Taiwan. ChatGPT prepared a peace treaty on Ukraine. I'm not going to read the whole thing for you, but it puts something together. Unfortunately, the system is going to be incredibly biased in the favor of whoever programs it. So I would not trust that something like this is going to be well received on all sides. But, you know, it's a start. If we were to create some artificial general intelligence, there very well could be a diplomatic utility to such a technology. And especially if it could be incredibly unbiased and understand every single nuance, every single need that either side of the debate had. And, you know, it very well could be utilized in that way as a mediator of sorts. Let's see what happens. Did I touch on all the bases here today? I think I did, guys. I got to go. You got better things to do. Stay prepped. Stay ready. And please, if you want to support the channel, if you want to keep some local people employed, go check out CanadianPreparedness.com. The best possible gear that you can get for survival and preparedness. And I stake my reputation on every single thing in that store. If something doesn't quite meet our testing, it doesn't stay in the store for too long. And in fact, the store is more of a, right now it's just keeping people employed. It's not something which is profitable because the cost of shipping is absolutely insane. Yet to have a brick and mortar store is also absolutely insane in this day and age. But yeah, that's the best way to support the channel. Or just like, comment, you know, share the videos. I know sometimes it's tough to share some of our videos. Share our videos that have a blue strip. They're a bit more G-rated. They got a bit more universal appeal. They're not as risque. So yeah, go and check that out. And just thanks again for all your support, guys. But, you know, I'm not even exaggerating at all when I say that we're getting really, really close to a major war. All the playing pieces are being put into position, and we just need to keep on preparing for it. That doesn't mean we don't live and enjoy the subtleties of life with our family and friends throughout the way. That doesn't mean we don't watch the odd NPC video to pass the time or contemplate the meaning of life and the cosmos and all those things. It just means that you should know that we're about to hit a brick wall going full speed in a car which the steering is pretty much screwed and the brakes don't work. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care. Canadian Prepper out.